Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat, and I'm super excited to be interviewing Tushar. Kaistha, the student I've known since 2015, and he chose to study in Asia, went to one of the finest institutions in Hong Kong, HKU, which we learn a lot more about today. So welcome, Tushar, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Arjun. My name is Tushar Kaistha. I am now 25 years old, so I was part of the 2017 batch to university. So as Arjun mentioned, I came to HKU in 2017 after receiving his help for around 2 years. So we've known each other since 2015. And I did my bachelor's in electronics engineering. And now I'm working at Morgan Stanley. So I'm working in my capacity as a technology associate, and my day-to-day job just includes, it's a computer science job. So my day-to-day job includes programming in different languages. My primary language is Scala and Python here and there.
Great. We'll just kind of go back in time a little when you were in high school. Most likely you've forgotten a lot of that.
A lot.
But just to remind you, since I have applications for all our students in our file and records, there was this thing I remember about you. You were really involved academically, challenging yourself, and also extracurricularly sort of just being there and doing so many things. So what are the things that you had in mind back then, which you feel made you more ready for college? Or if there is something like that, getting ready for college in high school, and you can sort of debunk that.
That's a good question. Yeah. I guess for me, it depends where you end up wanting to go to university. And whether it's in, it's in North America, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Asia, and all of those have different things that you end up needing to prep for. But I think one thing that applies kind of uniformly, at least to the extent that I noticed, was just about the preparation of, as cliched as it might sound, the preparation to be independent. So this is a little bit different than, of course, just challenging yourself academically, challenging yourself extracurricularly, and doing things to enrich your portfolio. But separate than that is simply preparing yourself for being completely and entirely independent. Especially coming from India, a lot of people have never necessarily lived outside of the country or have lived by themselves before, and that tends to be pretty difficult for a lot of people. So I think that's
Yeah, so maybe, diving deeper into stories, like what kind of challenges did you face or you saw other people face, which they were perhaps not ready for?
I think when you're living by yourself and then you kind of have suddenly all the freedom in the world to get up whenever you want and to eat whenever you want, and small things like that, things that are part of your daily schedule at home with the family. So those things, suddenly you're at complete ease and freedom to do them whenever. And for a lot of people, that means skipping meals entirely, or even staying up until 4 or 5 a.m., which is quite common. But over time, you kind of end up realizing that it takes a little bit of a toll, and then so not to say that you shouldn't do it or that university is not like that, but just it's important to know that when you get to university, you do have all that freedom. And then that means you need to be prepared to actually take care of yourself. That means you need to kind of be prepared to get enough sleep every day, or get enough food every day, or do your laundry on time. And I think in terms of exact stories, there's definitely cases of I've seen of people who kind of have a little bit of a tough time managing all of that, at least in the beginning, initially. And then it's difficult for them to also manage academics, and then university academics aren't any easier than high school academics. And so you have these cases of people kind of suffering the first semester they're here, the first year they're here, and then slowly adapting. So if you come in with an idea that, okay, this is going to be something I need to pay attention to, probably that's going to be shortened a lot.
Let's switch gears and sort of talk about HKU's academic climate.
Yeah.
Very often students compare different destinations. Could be the US, the UK, countries in Europe, Canada, colleges in India, and then there's Asia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. How would you describe the academics at HKU, particularly for engineering? And what was different, more challenging, less challenging compared to some of the more popular choices most students from India sort of end up choosing?
Right. I think HQ is a very good choice. For me personally, looking back in the past, it happened to be a very appropriate choice as well. I think for a number of reasons that I'll go into in a bit, but I think for me it ended up being a very wise choice. And in terms of academically, at least from the experience I've garnered till now, and the people I've met, and the experiences I've heard of, at least for engineering, although engineering is difficult everywhere in the world, to be honest, Arjun. It's not easy to go through an engineering course, no doubt. But I believe that HQ is definitely, in terms of pure academic difficulty, like a lot of Asian universities, is quite strict and quite rigid. So you do have a large academic challenge, like a pretty high bar for an academic challenge. And so I would personally, at least to what extent I've talked to people on, I would probably compare it to in terms of academic rigor. I would probably compare it to some of the Ivy Leagues in terms of engineering courses. So there's no doubt that it's difficult, and it indeed takes effort and focus and concentration. And I would extend this to other very well known universities in Asia as well. So NUS is no lesser, in fact, possibly even more rigorous academically speaking. So that's one thing. And in terms of a choice, and when people are wondering if they should go for it versus more popular European or North American choices, I think for me it turned out to be a very good choice, because looking a little bit into the future, fast forwarding to now, essentially compared to 7-8 years ago, it's I don't know if this will be the case 7 years from now, but the States is especially difficult, economically speaking, right now to get a job if you don't have a green card, if you don't have a citizenship. So from what I hear and from what I see, it's especially difficult to kind of survive there after your bachelor's, and people are forced to go back and do their master's, they're forced to go back and do their PhD, all in a bid to get their H-1B. So I've seen relatively better stories of people who go to places in Europe, or of course places in Asia. So in that sense, my main aim back then was going to the States, and Asia was the backup. But I think looking back, I'm quite glad that I ended up coming here, both in terms of the academic exposure, the famosity of the degree, so how well it's known, how well it's reputed. And also, I think just in terms of opportunities for jobs later on, and just general exposure. If people are worried that there's lesser international exposure here, I don't think that's necessarily true. There are probably fewer permanent international students than there would be in certain North American universities, but there's a very large percentage of exchange international students who come for a semester or a year. And so you actually do have an opportunity to meet people from all around the globe. And I indeed do now have friends from different places in Europe and North America and places that are much lesser known as well. So I think there is that.
So any STEM degree has this component of hands-on work, and for that, there is research with professors, there's clinic programs where corporations sort of sponsor projects and students participate in it. There could be challenges that students engage in on a weekly basis or a weekend. So what is the general feel that you got of the student body in engineering, in particular in your cohort? Was there always something to do? There was, students were busy figuring out things and how to make those connections with industry. And how did that career services, even if it was not say directly involved in all of this, how did the overall career service ecosystem support you when you were looking for internships or your final sort of job at Morgan Stanley?
Right, that's a great question. So I think in terms of resources, there is an abundance of resources available to students of a university. So I personally believe, after having gone through university in HKU in Asia, that the level of teaching standard will pretty much be identical in all the top universities around the world. I don't see there being a particular difference from what I hear. The main difference comes from the student body and the demographics of the student body, which is how engaged they are and how motivated they are and determined they are, and then of course how intelligent and well put they are, how well they apply themselves, and then also the resources available to you. So I think in terms of the resources available, there was indeed an abundance of resources available. There are different things that you can go out and you could do. There's a lot of opportunities for startups. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of seeds and funding that you can receive. In fact, I do personally know a few people who have gone and created startups and then done very well for themselves. And then one of them is featured on, I believe, was featured in Forbes recently as well. So there's many opportunities to reach a very high level. And on the other hand as well, not just opportunities for entrepreneurship or getting funding, but there's also opportunities for research. So there's a plethora of very, very accomplished and distinguished professors, and the research that they're doing is very cutting edge. And you always have the opportunity right from year one to approach them and get in touch with them. And you can just cold email any professors, and there's a chance they will reply to you, and you could potentially engage them in conversation and see where to go from there. You want to be an RA, and so on and so forth. And I think there's also plenty of opportunities as you approach your second and third years, end of the second and end of third year, to make, to increase your network, to improve your network, and to go out and meet new people. And that involves industrially. I mean, so there were many events where there are information dissemination events, and then there are brain teaser events, and coding events, and just in the technology industry, at least just for coding, not even for hands-on electronics or more physical physical engineering, but just for computer science, you have all these events. And so you have ways to get in touch with people from the industry, whether that's from Morgan Stanley or whether that's from different hedge funds, the fintech firms, startups, anything else. So these opportunities exist, and then that allows you to extend your network at a pretty relatively younger age, and that allows you to kind of build the foundation you need to also eventually work at these places. That's not to say a network will get you a job, but at the very least, it will get you some information about how the job works and whether it's something you really want to do. And then, of course, getting the job itself is pretty straightforward. You just study for it and you work for it, and then you give your interviews. But I would say one thing, at least in terms of Hong Kong, in terms of pure tech, Hong Kong is maybe not the best place. So we've got a lot of tech going on, but the tech is mostly in the purview of startups or in the purview of big finance companies. If there's pure tech is what people are interested in, then probably Singapore is a very viable option. So there's very many pure tech firms and pure tech, kind of big tech firms there as well. But here, the tech is always within the purview of startups, fintech firms, finance related, or big finance. Yeah.
Hong Kong gets a bad rap. There was a time where it was a favorite destination in Asia with Singapore. And then the climate, the political sort of environment sort of played out. What's the ground reality like? And we've seen students, again, sort of starting to apply and parents becoming a lot more open. But it's taken a few years to do that, to see that shift once again. What do you think is the reality on the ground when it comes to safety, the demonstrations, whatever we hear in Western media is perhaps pretty bleak, but like we know, living in India, the Western media doesn't really tell the full truth. So what is it that you feel students should know, and then perhaps live there safely, and obviously know how to keep themselves in a space where they do not fall into trouble?
Right. That's a very valid question, and I'm glad you asked that. I think Well, indeed, I think before the demonstrations and before COVID, Hong Kong was rapidly gaining popularity. And I was seeing a lot more people coming in, especially from India, but from everywhere, essentially. And then the demonstrations indeed were a difficult time. And then there was a period of time where things were, I wouldn't say actively unsafe. I think unless you were actively participating in any demonstrations, it was fairly safe to go around. But I wasn't there during that time personally, and I also only know of things from a secondhand account. But I think following that time, and it has been for 4 or 5 years now, and things indeed are getting back to a much more norm. So in terms of, well, I can't make any political statements, and I don't think I have the right to either. But purely from the perspective of an expat living and working in Hong Kong from India, I don't think there's any safety issues whatsoever. Yeah, or for students for that matter of fact. So everything in the city is just normal. There is no, unless you actively get yourself into trouble or you actively protest against the government, or actively protest certain things against the government, you actively get yourself into trouble, then there's probably some issues. But if you are just living and working normally and you don't have any political statements to make, then absolutely there is no safety issues to worry about at all. And yeah.
That's really reassuring. All our students, we've always kept Hong Kong in the radar, and I've also interviewed admissions officers from HKU and HKUST during COVID. I think that's the time when I used to run the college fair. It was really fascinating. So now let's talk about what are the skills actually transfer to a job in a mega finance firm like Morgan Stanley. What do you learn in college, and how does it really play out? So yeah, go ahead.
That's well, I'm wondering how civil I can be about this. But I think what you learn in university academically is not always necessarily useful in your job. It really depends on your job description. Even in one firm, there are many divisions. Even in one division, there are many, departments, and every department, many teams, and every team could be doing something quite different from the other team. So there's just too many possibilities. So it's difficult to say if your degree is going to particularly help you in your job. It comes down to it'll probably provide a pretty good foundation if it's in the same field, the same line. So for example, a computer science degree would give you a pretty decent foundation to apply for computer science jobs and, you've programmed before, so you have an idea how it is to program. But that's pretty much where the help stops. Industrial programming is very different from, academic programming. There's a very different, everything changes when you introduce scalability, when you have to suddenly cater to 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 things instead of just 10 things or one thing. So the nature of the code, the quality of the code, everything changes. The only major advantage, or the main major advantage, I would say, that a computer science degree would give you is that it would provide you a very solid foundation, not only for working later, but also for actually attempting the interviews. So personally, I did electronics. I did my bachelor's in electronics engineering, and of course, there's no transfer skill set at all because I'm doing computer science now. I'm doing programming. And if you're asking how I did that and how I got into that, I basically just taught myself. There's a couple, I took 1 or 2 courses, programming courses in uni, but mainly I just taught myself how to code. And I just did a bunch of coding questions online. And that's how I prepared for the interview. And then I gave my interview and I was lucky enough to receive the offer.
So what drew you to, say, opportunities in the finance industry? I know Hong Kong is essentially a financial hub, so it's default to have perhaps the best jobs available to students at HKU in finance. But were there other options, or it was limited to finance? And how did you then upskill yourself to understand the industry? And what exactly is the finance industry, and what kind of tech jobs are there? So many questions.
Yeah, right. That's a lot of them. I'll unpack them one by one. So the finance industry has a number of tech jobs. I think every major firm in today's society needs a pretty significant tech investment and a pretty significant tech division, department, or a side, if you will. So there's no doubt that there's a whole plethora of different jobs. One could be kind of more desk-facing, trader-facing, client-facing, where you're working on software that's actively used by traders to trade financially. And then the other options are kind of where you have tech ops, which is operational related tech. Then you have enterprise tech, where you're working on software that other developers will use to actually build further software that traders will use. So there's a whole bunch of links. You could be a backend developer, front-end developer. You could be working on UI. You could be working on databases. You could be working on algorithms. You could be working on financial models that involves more or less coding and more math. So there's a wide plethora of jobs. The only thing is, of course, under the purview of finance. So most people who join are attracted by the financial domain knowledge or the financial domain area, and or by the money, because most banks will give a pretty decent compensation. So I think this generally makes up a large percentage of people who will apply to banks, or large financial firms, not just banks, but hedge funds or so on and so forth. So I think that covers that question. In terms of, for example, how I upskilled myself and how I got there, I think the good thing about tech jobs these days, or at least for computer science tech jobs, is that they don't really care what your bachelor's was. I don't know if this is in opposition to how things were 30 or 35 years ago. I'm sure things change over time. But at least for this, I can be very sure that they don't necessarily care what your bachelor's degree itself was. What they care more is that, do you have any exposure in coding? Have you coded in the past? Do you have good skills in coding? So, summary, are you a good coder? If you are a good coder, and if your resume passes the initial CV screening stage, then you have as much of a chance as the person next to you to get into that job, even if you did your bachelor's in English literature or social sciences or history. So it's so the upskilling itself is very technical. You don't necessarily need to have a lot of financial knowledge. You can always gain it once you go there, or if you're interested in it, of course you can learn it beforehand. But for a pure tech role, at the very least, you will not really need so much financial knowledge. You will probably much more need the actual tech knowledge, which is design, kind of data structures and algorithms, and code design and system design. And generally things like that. Yeah.
Great. So what is your current day job like? What are the tasks that you do, and how do you then sort of keep track of future developments in the field?
Right. My day-to-day job is I work on a language called Scala. So it's I believe it's well, don't quote me on this. I should know this, but I believe it's the short form for scalable language, so Scala. And it's a functional sister of Java. So Java is a very famous object-oriented programming language. And Scala is a functional sister of Java. So it also compiles down to Java bytecode, and it will run on a Java virtual machine. And the actual, well, not to get into the itty-gritty details and bore everyone, but my main day-to-day job involves working on a risk platform within the fixed income division of Morgan Stanley. And essentially what I do is, my team is kind of special. My team is the core team of this risk platform, and it involves a lot of core tech. So my current day-to-day job, well, originally the team was in charge of developing APIs or functions to help other developers kind of use this platform, but that has long since been mature. And now my day-to-day job involves performance optimization, which I'm also very happy about. It's quite transferable. So how to make things faster, how to make things more stable, more robust, how to make things not use up as much memory, how to make things less expensive, all of them and so forth. So it involves a lot of profiling of how applications are running. It involves finding the bottleneck of the whole run, and figuring out where exactly things are slow and why they're slow, and then figuring out potential solutions to fix them. So the solution could come from a business side, which basically means you apply some business knowledge and you change the way things are written. So you actually gain some improvement. Or it could come from the tech side where you think, okay, this flag is not properly tuned, or the garbage collector is not as optimal as I'd like it to be, or the batching when I distribute things is really not that optimal either. So then there are different ways of, you have dozens of ways of solving that problem, and then you have to kind of figure out what the most optimal and efficient and least time consuming method is, because there's no guarantee that you apply it and then things will actually get better. So there's a lot of touch and go and trial and error, and it comes from experience and kind of just general ability. So yeah, I think that's a pretty basic description of my day-to-day job.
You did mention that there's a team, and so collaboration in tech is obviously been, every student has been exposed to collaboration and hackathons and various projects, even at the high school level. And then, of course, the real world has a lot more depth in that sense, that because you can collaborate with teams from multiple time zones and different backgrounds in terms of the particular problem that they're approaching and solving. So what do you think makes a good team player, coder, / maybe a product manager, or in your role, how would you define the skills that really make someone superior, let's say, to be able to do that job?
So technical skills itself are, of course, necessary. That's why you got the job. That's what you're paid to do. But I think more than anything else, the collaboration matters a lot. So it's about how quickly you can understand what people are telling you. It's about how quickly you can distribute work, assuming in a managerial role. It's about how quickly you can understand other people's strengths and use them to benefit everyone. So rather than you working on something for 5 days, you should know who you can ask, and you should know how to ask, and then you should also know that, okay, if I do ask, then things will be faster, and this would actually take like 10 minutes, not 5 days. So I think that's quite important. The ability to kind of collaborate within the team, the ability to know, when to ask questions, the ability to know how to ask questions, and generally the ability to. So I think being a good team player and working and having good teamwork skills is potentially the most important skill. If you are not you're not conducive to teamwork, and you're not really a team player, as cliche as this might sound, it actually does affect the whole team's productivity. So you end up with a situation where the person might be very good technically, but just because they're not good at communicating for whatever reason, you actually can't get work done as fast or as efficiently as the team lead would like. So I think being able to collaborate, and maybe it boils down to this: interpersonal skills, just interpersonal human skills, are without a doubt the most important thing, even in a technical role, because there is almost no technical role where you just sit and you do things by yourself. The bigger the company, the more people you have, and then the more collaboration you need. You are never an expert on everything. You always need to consult people on experts on different domains, and that means that you need collaboration. So unless you can guarantee that you are an expert on everything that you are working on, you will most definitely need interpersonal skills.
So we'll just kind of wrap up with, understanding the future of tech, and not just in finance, but kind of broadly speaking, since you've been always very curious to know things like AI, robots, you've done electronics and engineering degree, then, working in a software department of finance major. What do you see, where is technology headed in general? It's a very broad question, but
Yeah.
if you were to look at all the new buzzwords around AI and Gen AI and many other things, crypto and blockchain and whatnot, VR, and what are we actually missing? I mean, if you've seen the future, what is it like?
I wish I'd seen the future. That would make life a lot easier. Well, it's a question I'm far from being qualified to answer correctly. Although I'd argue nobody's qualified to answer correctly. But I think I can answer it as best in the extent of my capability, which is not much. But I would say that a lot of these buzzwords that you see, so AI, generative AI, machine learning, deep learning, ChatGPT. I think recently there was I'm sure you've kept up with it, but there was an announcement for GPT-4o, which is got very, for lack of a better word, gobsmacking capabilities. So the future of tech, I think, and I'm sure most people will probably agree with me and say something similar, but the future of tech is very firmly embedded in some form of artificial intelligence. It doesn't need to be Gen AI, but I think it's very important for anybody who's working in a technical capacity to keep themselves upskilled and keep their knowledge up to date. And especially when it comes to rapidly evolving technology like we're seeing today, mainly things related to AI. And I don't think AI will replace me, at least hopefully, not anytime soon. But I do think if I don't learn how to use it effectively and how to use it to improve my productivity or how to use it to, help me in my career moving forward, then I will get replaced, not by AI, but by other people who will know how to use it effectively. But I think that's the same in history. When there's something new that comes out and a massively useful tool or some paradigm shift in society and people don't bother learning about it or keeping up to date, then by definition, they'll be replaced by others who will. So the future of tech is bright, with a lot of shadows. So I think it's important to keep up to date as much as you can, keep upskill as much as you can.
So yeah, today's hot topic is ChatGPT 4o, and just to have my students sort of know a little bit more about it, where do you see the capabilities really enhanced? I know there's video, there's audio, there's a lot going on. It's also more current and updated information instead of data just was kind of processed, which was 2021 dated. So what is your understanding of the usage?
I think from an industrial point of view, the usage, at least for coding, comes more from Copilot, GitHub Copilot, than it comes from GPT-4o. 4o is a lot more general. Copilot, I've had the pleasure of using it recently, and it is very. I have to admit, it's fairly smart, and it does a pretty good job of improving your productivity. And if you use it well, it could really change things a lot, in terms of a pure coding perspective. But I think GPT-4o itself, the biggest change I see coming, and again, I'm far from qualified to comment on this, but at least from a personal point of view, there's also these things that have been announced by Microsoft recently, which is Copilot plus PCs, and it's basically this very, very powerful PC with I believe it was 40 trillion operations per second in their natural processing unit, NPU, I think it's called, or so it's like a GPU, but I don't recall the exact name, but it's basically for AI operations. And this PC will come baked in with GPT-4o, or I'm sure just the newer versions. It's a software update, essentially. They have the hardware ready for it. So I think the biggest difference will be, since right now we have the tech, but we don't have the interface for people to use it naturally on a day-to-day basis. When it's built into your PC, it's like a personal helper everyone has. It's like a super smart Siri or a super smart Alexa. And then you will start to see people's everyday lives change to be that much better. But that involves more repetitive tasks, more Excel-related tasks, PPT-related tasks, summarization tasks, English tasks, will get a lot easier to do, to the point where they will, if that's your whole job, then you should probably look into changing it a bit or upskilling yourself. Yeah.
So the future of education is also going through this whole churn, with technologies in place. Some people at the end of the spectrum say, let's embrace it completely and let students choose what they want to do, with, of course, ethical standards and reporting and disclosure. Whereas there are others who are still trying to control it, knowing very well that they will probably not be able to. So what do you think is the future of education broadly? Again, I know you're not experts here, but yeah, what do you think will happen?
I think it's impossible to control it. It's open source, it's everywhere, and just the access to it is so simple and so easy and free. You really can't stop people from using. You can't stop students from using it, right? And it's quite typical that younger people are more tech savvy than the older ones, and it's typically the older ones that are doing the teaching. So you end up with a situation where there are people who are always going to be more tech savvy and up to date, taking advantage of these really, really convenient interfaces to use this latest technology. So I think it's impossible to stop it. It really is completely impossible to stop it. There are definitely frameworks being put into place, and there are definitely countermeasures being taken, but they will only be somewhat effective. So I think for the future of education, it will be very important for teachers to embrace this new technology and to actually use it. I vaguely recall hearing recently about somewhere, I read about an article, or was it a post or a video, some form of media, where I read about this or I heard about this professor or this teacher is in an education establishment, and this professor was basically employing generational AI in his day-to-day teaching. So he was basically telling students that, giving students essays to read coming from Gen AI, and then giving students full access to Gen AI when writing their own essays. But the key point being that even if you're going to be using Gen AI to write your essays, I want the essays to actually make sense in the purview of what you've learned. And I will grade them keeping in mind that you have full access to Gen AI and I have been teaching you Gen AI. So if the samples I'm giving you is already involved with Gen AI, even if you return things to me, I can tell the difference based on your personal style of writing. And I think, I'm not sure how effective this is already, but I think this is precisely the future. Such tech will have to be baked in to our educational process and our educational methods for there to be any chance of students learning things effectively going forward.
Okay, so thanks. This has been such a delightful conversation, and look forward to many more. There's so many things to catch up on. So yeah, thank you again, Tushar, and
No
look forward
worries.
to seeing you again.